what you're interested in and then finding jobs to do.
Okay. I feel like I have a sneeze that's coming on and it's not coming on yet. So anyway,
Okay.
I have Kleenex ready just in case. Okay, so I fell into it. I never planned. I never said, when I grew up, I want to be a writer. In fact, when I was growing up, my sister and I were always like rambunctious and in everybody's faces and just like obnoxious and funny. And I used to tell my sister that I thought she would become a comedian when she grew up. She got mad at me because she thought I was telling her she was going to be Bobo the clown. And what's funny is that I ended up being the stand-up comedian. So that's something else I do on the side
Really?
for the last 25 years. But so that's just kind of an aside thing, but it's something that with writing and stand up and all that, I never planned it. I never said this is what I want to do. In fact, when I graduated from high school at 17, I my mom helped me find a job at this company called Gardco Lighting in San Leandro, and it was in the accounting department. So I learned how to use a 10 key and I just, added up numbers and things like that. And so I did that for many years, even until I got married. But I will say, I always loved writing. I was always a writer. In fact, I loved creating things. Like I would make, when I got married, I would make dinner for my mom and dad. And I made menus and like I had really cool menu items. I'm not a chef by any means. I hate to cook, but I love to order out. But I was like, it was writing, and I'm being creative with my words and stuff. So yeah, when I got married, I still was working in accounting because that's all I knew, accounts payable and receivables. And let's see, what happened is I ended up, we had a baby 2 years later into the marriage. And I was like a stay-at-home mom. And I remember telling my husband at the time that I wanted to go back to school. I always wanted to go to school. I always wanted to go to college, but I never had the money to go to college. My parents didn't have the money to send me, not even to community college. But I did take like a course here and there every once in a while at community colleges. But I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just, I was good in English. I got straight A's in that and just loved writing. And then while I was married and had my son, he was around 2, I wanted to go work at the Olive Garden. I'm a people person and I love serving people. I love serving food. Don't like making it, but I do like serving it and eating it. And so my husband I didn't need to work, but my husband was like, go ahead, do it. So I did. And as I was a food server at the Olive Garden in Pittsburgh, it was kind of a new restaurant, sort of. And so we didn't have a whole lot of restaurants out this way in Contra Costa County. And the tippers were horrible. And I gave excellent service. I was like the best, friendly, smiling, very attentive, filled their coffee cups. And so I thought I was so mad that they were not tipping. And I ended up writing a letter to the editor at, I think it was the Contra Costa. I don't know if it was the Contra Costa Times or it had a different name back then. And I wrote a letter called Tips for Tippers. And it was 2,000 words. I had a lot to say. and it was good too. It was good tips. And I sent it in and the editor said, yeah, this is great, but it needs to be 250 words. And I'm like, what? No, this is all good stuff.
Don't cut it out.
Yeah, don't cut anything out. I was married to that. And they said, sorry. So I cut it down. They ran it like the next day. And it was so cool to see my name, Charleen Earley, for my byline. I was like, oh, that's so cool. More than the tips, because that did nothing. Nobody read it, I don't think. I don't know. I still got the same tips. And so then later, I'm still working and I'm like, I told my husband, I want to go back to school. I don't know what I want to study, but I just want to go back to school. And so he was like, sure, do it. So I started going to Los Madonnas College and just taking core classes. And I ended up getting an AA degree in liberal arts. and which is just core classes is all it is, just the basics. And I was reading the campus newspaper, and someone was constantly bashing one of my English teachers. And it made me mad again, made me mad. And so I ended up writing a letter to the editor for the campus newspaper, which was called The Experience. And they ran it like right away. And I was like, oh, so I think once I saw that, and then there was one more thing that happened that just really made me think, this might be what I love doing. Is I love doing crafts. And so, you know how like on your clothes and stuff, and you've got labels, you know, in the back and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, some of those labels are really cute. And I was like looking at them, I'm like, they shouldn't be hidden. So I thought, I'm going to just take them all out and sew them onto a white shirt. So I did. And I started telling my friends and family that I was doing that. They started mailing me their labels. And so like I had Fruit of the Loom, I had Victoria's Secrets, I had all these different variety, and they were like vertical, horizontal, all different ways. And I thought, I'm going to send this into Women's Day magazine because they had like this section where you can send in your craft idea. So I did. And I was divorced by this time. And I had my boyfriend at the time. I had him take a picture of me. I was wearing the shirt with all the labels. And then in both hands, I was holding all the garments that I had taken the labels out of. So it was kind of a fun photo, you know, like that. They ran it in their magazine and sent me a check for $150.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, ka-ching. And I think maybe that ka-ching thing is what really like set off bells, because I was like, I could get paid money for this. This is way cool. My byline, my story, and my photo, and money. And so at Los Madonnas, I started taking I checked out their journalism class, and it was a production class, and I signed up for one of them. I don't even know how I got in, because there was other requirements that you're supposed to take before that. They let me get it, I guess. And I took that class, and my teacher, Cindy McGrath, who is still my mentor today, she's still there. I took the class, and the first day of the class was really weird. They were talking about a budget meeting, which had nothing to do with money, but like sections of the paper and who's going to write this and that. And I'm like thinking, I'm in the wrong class. I don't know what this is. I just love writing, you know?
Yeah.
And the teacher came around and she said, you know, so what do you like to write? And I go, oh my God, I like to write about people, places, things, you know, pretty much nouns. And she's like, okay, good. She goes, that's great. She goes, we'll have you be the perspectives editor. I go, wait. First of all, slow down. I'm in the wrong class. I don't even know what perspectives editor is. I just like to write. And she goes, no, you're going to be great. I ended up loving the class. And the next semester, I became editor-in-chief of that newspaper.
That is
And
so cool.
yeah, it was way cool. And then for the second semester, I did it again. So a whole year of being editor-in-chief. And I think that's where I really fell in love with it and fell into it, because I didn't plan it at all. So that's a long answer.
I love it. That is very cool to hear about then. My second like kind of part to that question is, then as a freelance writer, you're not like with a single business, right? So how did you go about finding places to write for?
Yeah, great question. And it is a business. So you're your own business person. So it's considered, you're considered a like a 1099 employee. You're not a W-2 employee. So you're not going into the office and punching a time card, which I hate doing even to this day.
Fair.
But I love teaching, because teaching, it's different every day. I mean, it's different, you know, especially in person. But as a freelance writer, you're considered an independent contractor. So you definitely need to keep track of all your receipts, because you can write them off at the end of the year when you do your taxes. You don't get any taxes taken out. So when they mail you your money, or if you get direct deposit or whatever, there's no taxes. It's if they're going to pay you $150 for an article and photo, that's what's in your check. And then you have to pay taxes on that later.
Got it.
So as a freelance writer, it's kind of cool because you kind of call your own shots as far as your own hours and stuff. You don't have to go into the office or anything, but there are a lot of duties that you have to do that are part of the job. Was that your question, or did I deviate?
Sort of. It kind of all like goes into it. It was more just like, how did you find where you wanted to write for? Like, was it because, I follow like a whole bunch of magazine companies that I really love. So it's like, oh,
Nice.
I would love to write for them, but I have no clue how I would go about that if I was like a freelance writer, like, oh, here, I wrote this. Do you want to put it in? Or
Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, so how I got started, one was like serendipitous because I didn't expect it. But first of all, taking journalism classes is important. A production class where you're actually working on, that's my old-fashioned landline that's ringing right now.
I love that.
It's so annoying though, because it's all telemarketers and everything. And it's like, I got to go run over there and, hang up on it, but I'll just let it go. Anyway, and that reminds me of what you were saying, because I'm going to go to my bookcase over here for a second too and get something to show you. But what happened is you take these classes, a journalism class, to learn like AP style writing. Writing for a newspaper and magazine is way different than writing an essay for an English class. It's a whole different cat. Yes, there are words involved. Yes, there are grammar that's involved too, but there's different styles that are done differently for a newspaper. And there's a different style that's done for the West Coast and the East Coast. So the West Coast, we use what's called AP style guide. And then the West Coast, it's called Chicago style guide. So there are some differences, like the West Coast loves the Oxford comma, which is that comma before the and the East Coast doesn't. However, they just changed it in the AP style guide, I think several years back, which pisses me off because I don't like the Oxford comma. I hate it. Anyway, so working, writing for a campus newspaper is good, because what happens is, and when I say campus, it could be high school too. It doesn't have to be college. It could be either or both. But what happens is you're gathering clips of your work. Like you were saying, here's my story. Do you want this? What if you want to go and work at a particular magazine or newspaper, you would be giving them your clips. And that's basically clipped out pieces of your article that from the newspaper, or in this case, in today's world, a link to your article. So you would give that to them and say, hey, this is my work. Would you, do you have any writing jobs? And this is my work. This is my experience, almost like handing them a resume, or for an artist, it's almost like handing them a portfolio.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did that. I went to the local newspapers. A lot of the local newspapers are free. Like they're delivered free to people. There's no subscription, like, the San Francisco Chronicle or the New York Times, those are subscription based. You have to pay money monthly, or weekly, or just at the newsstand. But so the local papers, like wherever town you live in, like I was living in Oakley. So I went to the Oakley Press, and there's also the Brentwood Press. And there was also other smaller newspapers that were running around that I went to and said, hey, here's my clips from Los Madonnas College. This is my work. This is my skill level. Do you have any openings? So some of them did, and they would pay like $50 an article back then. But a lot of places now are still doing that. So it hasn't quite evolved. But anyway, but when I was, okay, so remember I told you I was doing stand-up comedy too. And I started that around the same time that I started writing. I would write humor columns also, like a lot. And those were really fun. So in the campus newspaper, I would have a humor column called Funny Side Up instead of Sunny Side Up. So the pun on eggs. Yeah. And so one day, a reporter from the San Francisco Chronicle was on our campus, and he picked up our paper, the latest edition that we had on campus. He saw my humor column and read it and liked it. And he messaged me and he said, hey, my editor at the San Francisco Chronicle is looking for writers. Do you have any, can you send her your clips? And I was like, oh my God, yes, of course.
Of course.
So, yeah, so here it is. So I sent it off to the editor, Deborah Brown, and she hired me right away. And
Awesome.
yeah, so my first article, so that was kind of like my big break.
Yeah.
I even framed my first check from the San Francisco Chronicle, also because it's signed by the Hearst Corporation, and I'm a big fan of the Hearst Castle.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I've gone there like probably 7 or 8 times, and I just love that place. And it was created by a newspaper mogul, William Randolph Hearst, and so I framed it because it's got Hearst Corporation on there as their signature. But my first article for them, they wanted me to do was to write an article on the local Antioch rugby team.
Okay.
And yeah, that was my reaction. I was like, I don't even know what rugby is.
Yeah.
I don't like to do sports. But I was like, yeah, I'll do it for sure.
Got it.
And so I did, and I couldn't believe it, that it worked, and they kept most of what I wrote and everything. They didn't edit out hardly anything. And I was like, yay. So I wrote for them for their Friday section for about 7 years. And then at the end of the 7 years, they let go of 35 of us writers and 5 editors. So 3 of my own editors. You have a lot of editors, especially at a large corporation as that one. I did go in once to go meet my first editor, Deborah Brown. She was mean. She was mean as far as like, she would never send me a nice, like, oh, thank you, that's a good article, or you did great. It was just like, here's the changes, you need to fix this. And so I met her in person, and she was still kind of like standoffish, But the day that they let us all go, they had a lunch for us in San Francisco. And so it was down below in some restaurant, but down below. And there's a long, long table. And we're all sitting across from all these other freelance writers and editors. And we had never met our editors in person. At this point, I had not met her, I don't think. No, wait, I did meet her, but I didn't know that was her. She was sitting next to me and I didn't even know it. And I didn't really recognize her or anything. And then a couple of my other editors were there. And I started talking about to another writer about my horses. I had 2 horses for 16 years. My last one died just before COVID.
Oh.
But he was old age, so that part is okay. But I'm talking about my horses, and this lady next to me is like, horses, what? So she starts talking to me. Turns out that's my main editor, Deborah Brown. And I'm like, ah! And she lived in Lodi, and she commuted from Lodi to San Francisco every single day, which is a major commute.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, she and we hit it off. Once the horses came up, we hit it off. So we've been friends ever since. And she ended up when she was let go, like all of us were, and it was due to funding. They didn't have enough money to pay for all of us and everything. And she ended up going back to school to get her degree to become a lawyer, I believe. So, and it's kind of a shoe-in. When you're a reporter, when you write for a newspaper, the skills that you learn is so amazing that you could become a lawyer, you could become a PI, private investigator. There's just so many different, because you're used to asking questions. That's like huge. But hold on one second. Let me go get this book really quick.
Okay.
Hold on. Okay. So you were talking about like, finding jobs, where do you go and stuff, and you've got some magazines. It's excellent to have some magazines that you like, that you want to write for. Go to the store, go to the bookstore and buy them and flip through them, and you'll find the editor's email address and name. read their letter from the editor. There's usually an editor's note at the beginning of the magazine, to kind of get to know who they are as a person, and then flip through the magazine to see what they run, what they publish, because you don't want to pitch a fashion article to a sports magazine.
Yeah.
Unless it's fashion sports. So you want it to be relative to the magazine. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does.
But here's a book called The Writer's Market. And this one is 2016. They put one out every year. You can do a screenshot if you want.
I got it written down, but
Oh,
thank
good.
you.
But so this is really cool. They do it's thick. This is like big.
It is a big book.
It's a big book. And I think it's like it's kind of expensive. And this was the last one that I bought, 2016. I used to buy one almost every year.
Okay.
But it's a write-off if if you're a writer. So you can write this off. And I probably did. So this is $29.99. So it's kind of pricey. And this was 2016. There's a comedian, you know how it has a Canadian price?
Yes.
So there's a comedian that does a joke where she says, "I'd like to pay the Canadian price, please," which is $33.99. That's a joke, but not mine. But anyway, this book is super, super cool because it's got all of the newspapers and magazines that are in the market right now. So it's called Writer's Market. There's also one for like if you are a book author. So I think it's a book author's market. There's some for all these different categories and stuff, but this one is for like newspapers and magazines. It's got every magazine in here that's for the 2016 that's registered for, and it talks about, it gives you their email address, it gives you their mailing address, it gives you what they pay for an article. They give you the percentage of how much is in-house, which is staff, and how much is freelanced, so outsourced. So like it'll say 20% of our content for our newspaper or magazine is outsourced, which would be you. So it's really cool, and it gives you a little bit of background about the magazine or the newspaper. And there's also other things in here like query letters, like how to send a pitch, a story pitch to an editor, which is something I do all the time.
So helpful.
What's that?
I said that's so helpful. Like that's so nice.
Yeah, it's really cool. It gives you all kinds of tips and lots of other things. It's a big resource thing too, but it's alphabetized. So like if you know like Women's Day magazine, you just go to the W's and find Women's Day magazine. So if there's a magazine you like, you can go to that magazine and just get the 411, the intel on it, and then go from there. Okay. But I also say, just pick up the magazine that you like and really, really dissect it and see what do they buy? What do they publish? What are they interested in? What are their readers wanting? And that's how you can determine that. The other thing that I was going to show you really quick is the AP Style Guide. So this one is 2018. I think that's probably the last one that I bought. I would buy one every year. They do have it online now or digital, so you can just have it on your phone. But I like it like this, like it's like spiral bound, because it's like a recipe book. It's like it's easy to just lay down on there. And all these references to food, I don't cook, but, but I collect things that are like, vintage kitchen stuff too. But this one is kind of like alphabetical, and it's like, it answers a lot of questions on, wait, do I, I'm going to send this article to this potential newspaper magazine. I want to send them perfect copy. I want to send them something that they're going to love and not hate and say, yes, we would like that. And like, let's say, is that word hyphenated? I don't know. Look it up. It's in here. So this is like every writer that you see, that you meet, any newspaper writer, reporter, or news anchor, this is what they call their Bible. So it's their Bible. But it's a really good book because it shows you, do I capitalize? Do I not capitalize? When do I capitalize? So a lot of that will be in here. And then for sports writers, there's a section for sports writers. There's certain sections for specific type of beats. So I write myself features mostly. I'm a middle child, and I love to keep the peace. I want everyone to get along. So it's hard for me to write a hard news piece because somebody's going down.
Yeah.
And I just want it to be all kumbaya. I want everyone to be, we're all good. We're all good. Let's just, kumbaya and stuff. So I mostly will do that. However, if you want to break into the writing world, you have to learn to write everything. So
Yeah.
that includes obituaries. It includes advertorials. An advertorial is basically like an editorial about a company.
Got it.
Mostly about a company, but it's a paid ad. So it is biased. So
Yeah.
it's going to be, this gym is amazing. They're great. It's not going to be a critical thinking piece. It's not going to be a true piece either, because the company is paying for that. So that's called an advertorial. I hated those. I never wanted to do those. As much as I am a, peacekeeper, I still hated doing advertorials.
Yeah, I could see
Because
that.
but you just have to let the reader know. It should be written above the article somewhere that it's an advertorial. And most people don't know what that means, so it doesn't even matter. But
Yeah.
it matters to me, as the writer. So if I'm going to put my name to something, I want to let the reader know that this is a biased piece. And I'm sure that they probably have many complaints about this company. You just got to read the reviews.
Yeah.
And hopefully the reviews are true.
Not another paid source.
Yeah, exactly. Or a troll or something or whatever, or disgruntled somebody. But yeah, yeah. And I think one of your questions too was that you had sent me prior was like getting jobs. Is it hard to go up the ladder or whatever?
Yeah.
When you're I can't speak to being a staff writer, although I take that back. I was a staff writer for the Brentwood Press for a while. Didn't enjoy it. I don't like going into an office and having to punch a time card and or have to produce so much in so little of a time, which is what most staff writers have to do. So you have to go in and produce 3-4 stories, sometimes a day. So it's a lot of work. And I guess that's maybe the lazy side of me, that I like to choose my own hours and just be my own boss. But for a freelancer, I can speak to, because that's what I've done most of my career.
Yeah.
You have to hustle. If you want that job, you have to find those stories and you have to pitch it to your editor. So your editor is not going to say, Charleen, can you write this article, and this article? Because you're not a staffer, you're a freelancer. So you're a business coming to them saying, hey, I'd like to write this article. Yes or no, maybe. And that's kind of how my magazine started. So I had been freelancing for so many years. You get a lot of rejections in the beginning. Back when we didn't have this vast internet and everything, you had to send in a query or a story pitch by mail. And you also had to send in your letter with your story pitch saying, hey, I'd love to write this article about Madelynn. She's amazing. And you'd have to send also a self-addressed stamped envelope with your name and address on it, your stamp, because they're going to write you a letter and say yes or no.
Got it.
I got a lot of no's, and it was depressing. But so one of the things that you need to have in this business is thick skin and not to take it personal. There's a lot of writers out there. There's a lot of talent out there. But I always say, never give up. Just keep doing it. Just keep trying. Just keep trying. So I had gone to the Brentwood News, which is different from the Brentwood Press, years ago. And I was so excited, and I brought in my clips and, this is my writing, this is my published work. And I took it into there, and the editor at the time, she looked at it and she said, yeah, no, this is weak writing. And I was like, I mean, I probably did cry. I probably did cry a little bit when I went back to my car. I don't remember, but I know I was probably sad. And years later, probably like maybe 1 or 2, not even that much longer afterwards, I got into a bidding war where 2 newspapers wanted me. And one was the Brentwood News, but it was the Antioch News. They're related, same company. So it was them that wanted me, and the Brentwood Press. And we got into it, and I was like going back to my teacher, Cindy McGrath, and I was asking, suggestions and help, and what should I ask? She goes, I would go back to both of them and ask them some certain questions, because if you're getting in a bidding war where they both want you, and it's a competing paper, so these are competing papers with each other, you can't write for both. I mean, I could still write for the San Francisco Chronicle because that's San Francisco, but in same Contra Costa County, you can't. And so I wrote down my questions, and I went to both of them, and I asked them my questions, and the Antioch newspaper, I think it was called the Antioch Ledger at the time, they were pissed. They did not like my questions. And they said, did the Brentwood Press ask you to ask these questions? And I was like, first of all, I'm very flattered now. These are my own questions. And this is what I want to know. Now, I was going to get a higher pay at the Antioch paper. I knew more of the people at the Brentwood Press. I'd been in this area for a long time. I really didn't know the people the editors that worked at the Antioch paper. I ended up taking the Brentwood Press, which was lower pay. I probably should have taken the other one, but I didn't. And I think it was because of their snootiness and maybe their first rejection of me. Who knows? We'll come back. Little karma.
I made it.
So you really have to be aggressive, put yourself out there, and just keep asking them and going back. So even though you're rejected at one point, go back a year later. Here's my work now. Now, what do you think? So you do have to hustle more. If you're a staff writer, I guess if you want to become an editor, that would be a step up. Then that's an opportunity for you. So I think that there's always room for growth and going up the ladder in any job. Yeah.
Okay, so then if we're talking about rejection and all that, what were the other positives and negatives of being a freelance writer?
So the positives, choosing your own hours, pitching your own stories. The negatives, you have to be a business owner. So you have to learn how to invoice, how to bill a company, come up with templates and, send them your invoices. You have to keep track. So I had spreadsheets, I still do today. You have to keep track of, what if you sent out a couple invoices and you forget about it and they forget about it, then you're not getting any money. There's more work, I think, involved being your own business owner because you have to hustle. If you're a staff writer, you don't have to hustle as much. You just have to do the job and that's it, and do well. But I think hustling is part of being a freelance writer. Also, you need to be a people person. So if you're not a people person, you don't like talking to people, that could be a problem.
Okay.
And if you don't like, you also have to, as far as having a thick skin, is not to be shy about asking tough questions. So if you're queasy on, for the San Francisco Chronicle, we had to ask them all the time what their age was, no matter almost all the time. Sometimes the age is not germane to the story. It's not necessary, but I would get an editor that says, what's the age? Oh, shoot, I don't know. I gotta go back. I forgot to ask. And a lot of people don't like to tell their ages. A lot of celebrities don't. So I covered the celebrity beat for the Stockton Record for 3 years. And that was a lot of fun, but you can have divas. And I don't know what the male version is. Is it Devo? I don't know.
Maybe
a male version of a diva. But you can have my very first celebrity was Mickey Rooney, the late Mickey Rooney. He was 82 at the time. He was an actor, started out as a child, and in so many movies, a lot of old movies and everything. And halfway through our conversation, and it was by phone because he was in LA, The Stockton Record wasn't going to pay me to fly out there. I mean, I barely got enough to cover, the phone conversation, but he halfway through my conversation, I was in tears. He had me in tears because he wouldn't answer any of my questions.
Oh.
He was a Devo. He was done. He had been in show business for all of his entire life. And he was only doing this interview because he had to do this show with his wife in Lodi, and he needed the money. He was on his 8th wife, his 8th and final wife.
Okay.
He died with having 8 on his record. So he needed the money. I think he probably had a lot of child support payments in there, and a lot of like spousal support payments in there, a lot of money that he owed. So he did not want to do the interview with me. And so halfway through the conversation, I'm like this. He couldn't even tell. Okay. So out of your Emmys and your Oscars and everything, which one do you cherish the most? I can't answer that. I'm not gonna pick one. It's like every single question that I asked him, I felt like it was one of those, that thing where you toss up the plates and then you shoot them.
Yes.
So I felt like I was tossing up all these different plates, all these questions, and he was shooting every one of them down. And I was crying also because I figured, okay, this is my first celebrity that I'm interviewing for my editor for, the Stockton Record. I'm going to get fired because I don't have a story.
Yeah.
And I ended up going to my editor and telling him what happened. Oh, and Mickey Rooney said, talk to my wife. So I talked to his wife for about an hour and a half, and that was great. She was wonderful, but I didn't want her quotes. I wanted he's the actor, not her.
Exactly.
She's wife number 8. I'm like, that's a whole different story right there. And so my editor said, well, Charleen, you have 2 choices.
Mm-hmm.
You can go back and re-interview him again, or you can write up that story as the cantankerous bastard that he is. And I'm like, oh, really?
I can take it this way.
So I'm not fired. And so what do you think I did?
I'm thinking you took the second option.
Writing him up as the cantankerous?
Yeah, no, I think
Is that what you think I did?
I think that's what I would have wanted to do.
This is what you wanted me to do. I ended up going back and interviewing him again. And his handler, so when you're a celebrity, you have handlers, they handle you with the press. And so she said to me, do you want me to give him a different name, or a different newspaper? And I go, no, you tell him Charleen Earley with the Stockton Record. So I did. He didn't remember me. He didn't remember the record. He didn't remember anything. And I went in and I got almost the exact interview the second time around, although I was a little bit more prepared, I was a little tougher now. And I did get maybe 1 or 2 more quotes out of him, and I got the article and everything, but that was it. This business, you have to have a thick skin. You have to not take it personal and just not freak out.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good to know. Since you're saying, you have to, it's like your own business and you're managing all that, what is the reality of a work-life balance when it's your own kind of schedule?
I don't think I'm really good at that. Maybe other people are better at it, managing their time and stuff, but being a freelance writer, it's kind of a 24/7 job. Mm-hmm. Like you're working on the weekend sometimes. Sometimes you have to interview them on a Saturday or Sunday when they're available. And the thing is that do you want to write the story? Do you want to get paid for the story? If you do, then you will make it work. So you will meet them at 9:00 at night. It's not your standard hours. If you are working as a staff writer, it is working hours. Okay. You can shut your phone off and stuff, and you don't have to do any interviews after hours, after 8 to 5 or whatever it is. Dolly Parton, is that 9 to 5?
Yes.
So as a freelance writer though, and you're your own business owner, then you kind of have to open that door of you're available at any time. You could still set boundaries, and say, you're not going to answer the phone after 9 or 10 or whatever your limit is, or you're not going to work on the weekends, but you just have to always remember that then you're not going to get that story filed on time. Or maybe you won't get that story at all. I was going to interview Andrew Dice Clay. He's a comedian. And he's known for like every other word that he says is a swear word. And so I was supposed to interview him, and because he was performing in Stockton, and I was thinking about this, I was like, oh my God, I don't even think I'll be able to write very much of an article because every other word is going to be a swear word. And so it's going to be like this tiny. But we couldn't get our schedules together. And so that meant I couldn't write the story. So that meant I had to say goodbye to some money. And I did want to interview him because I thought it would be so fun, but I just bleep, 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 bleep. I recorded all of my phone conversations with all the celebrities, so I still have them on a little cassette tape, which I want to convert to, digitalize it, but to preserve it. But if you and I do that for accuracy. So when you're interviewing somebody who is a VIP, someone who's a celebrity, somebody who's a high official, congressperson, anybody that's like really up there, I always say to record it because you want your article to be accurate. Yeah. And you don't want to be sued for anything that's inaccurate. So that's why I record it, and then you have to transcribe it. So that's also another negative too, is that transcribing is tedious. Okay. But a tip, here's a pro tip for you, is that you can record it using some devices now. They didn't have it back then, but now they have things like one app is called Otter. I don't know if you've heard of that. You can download it for an Android or an iPhone on your phone, and also on your laptop and your computer. And it does record the conversation, like it would record all of this that we're doing right now, and it transcribes it as well, which is really, really cool, because it's like, to have to go back in, rewind, stop, play, rewind, stop, play. It's a nightmare. But the only problem with that, there's drawbacks for everything, is that it may not get the spelling correctly on a lot of things. So you have to go through the transcription, kind of like a YouTube thing, and the transcribing for YouTube, you got to make sure that it's the right spelling. Because if you say Smith, it might spell it S-M-I-T-H, but maybe they spell it S-M-Y-T-H. Yeah. And so there's lots of that. Or if it doesn't pick up your voice, if you don't enunciate very well, or the person you're interviewing doesn't, then you'll have some issues there. So you have to go back and like really fix it.
Like grammar check it all. Okay.
Yeah. More than grammar check it too. Like really, because there's like the word too, T-O-T-O-O and T-W-O. So there's just a lot of other nuances that you got to check.
Okay. Nice to know. So I know that since you're a freelance writer, it's your own business. Was there any of your favorite places though that you worked, just with them?
Yeah. I saw that question. I actually answered some of them. I was like jotting down notes and everything, but then I stopped because I was so busy. I had all this other stuff, and I'm like, I'll just wing it. So I'm trying to think. I've had, out of 25 years, I've just have loved, just in general, being a freelance writer, because I was one of those students that loved being a student, like sat at the front row, and I was like this all the time. I wasn't a smart student. I wouldn't, I was like A, B student, but sometimes C's, D's, and sometimes an F. So I wasn't like, a stellar person or anything, but I loved learning. And to me, being a freelance writer is like being in a classroom and without walls. So there's no walls. You get to go here, you get to go there, and you get to learn about everything, like everything. And so you will become the best person at the party because you will know a little bit of everything. Like someone will start talking about rugby and you're like, oh yeah, rugby. I got it. It's so cool. But what a fun game. And, you'll just learn about everything. But I think covering the celebrity beat was probably the most fun for me. I met a lot of comedians, Chris Titus, Tracy Morgan, Vicki Lawrence. She played in the sitcom Mama with Carol Burnett for many years. I got to go to a lot of their shows afterwards too, which was really cool. That's kind of a perk. And I went to Vicki Lawrence's comedy show and she loved my shoes. I was like, oh my God. And they were mules, like, you know, you slip into them and stuff. They're really cute. I had a whole bunch of them. And she was like, and I'm like, oh my God, the celebrity loves my shoes. Like, it should be the other way around. I should be like, you know, totally like fanning on her. Yeah, so like meeting a lot of the country stars. I met a lot of country musicians. So that was probably my favorite. Some that are like hard hitting and emotional was a couple that lost their son to suicide in Discovery Bay, having to, you know, being a mom myself, to lose a child is, I think, the worst pain on planet Earth. And so some of them have, some of the stories and the places that I've been has a really movingness to the story, and to, you know, it affects my life. One time, so here's a funny one though. I'm allergic to rabbits. And I used to have rabbits, and I was even allergic to the alfalfa with my horses. And every day I'd go to the stables, I would get welts. They look like mosquito bites, but they're not. It's just an allergic reaction and itchy and all that. Anyway, this one time I'm interviewing this guy at his house, and he says, oh, we're going to interview we'll do this in the garage. And I'm like, okay, kind of weird. I've never done an interview in the garage before. But the garage door was open, so that was cool. And I'm like, why can't we do this in the house? You know, and his wife and his kids, I guess because the wife and kids were there, and maybe that was a less distraction area. So sitting down at this tiny little makeshift table and stuff, I got my laptop and I type as they're talking, because I can type really fast without looking at it. And so I see a cat go by and everything, and my breathing starts to close up, like the breathing tubes start to close up, and I'm like starting to wheeze. And I'm like, I'm not really allergic too much to cats, and I have 2 right now. I'm not, it's okay, it's not that bad, but rabbits will send me to the hospital. And so I'm telling the guy, I'm like, oh my God, I go, my breathing's starting to get really bad. I go, I saw your cat. And he goes, I go, I'm not really that allergic to cats. I go, I'm deathly allergic to rabbits. And he goes, oh, there's a rabbit behind you in the cage. And I'm like,
I gotta go.
Yeah. He goes, do you want to do this another time? I go, no, let's just wrap this up really quick and then I'll go. So I think I just asked him like a couple more questions, and I was like, okay, gotta go. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for sending me to the hospital. I'll send you the bill. Yeah, that was crazy. I was like, oh God, that was memorable. I'm sure I'll think of some more that were like super memorable, but none of them where it was life-threatening or anything like that. Because that's good. I have, you know, other friends that are news anchors, of course, and their lives have been, you know, threatened and stuff like that. Yeah, I did when I read my own magazine, and this was my magazines. This one is the last, I think this might have been one of the closest to the last ones I did, which is Colorful Living magazine.
Yes.
Yeah, and this was this one was the last one, and this is where we were teaching in person, and I had this guy Frank Somerville from Channel 2 News be our guest speaker. So he came in and was our speaker. So we did a group shot and everything. I did have one threat from a celebrity, and I won't say who. And it's so funny because when I tell the story, usually in class, in person class, the students try to figure out who it is.
Have they ever? And you've been like,
they've never guessed. No.
Okay.
But the celebrity threatened to, you know, an injunction to close my, stop the presses, basically, based on a photo that we ran that he gave me. Well, my photographer took that we had permission from my photographer to take. But anyway, that's all I'll say about that one.
Okay.
But, I will say this too, and even though there was the threat, it didn't happen because they didn't have any legal grounds to stand on to do it. So that was scary though, because you're a business owner and you don't want something like that to go down. And that basically stopped the presses because they didn't want the photo to go out. But that could also be like, let's say I had something in the article that they didn't like. So they could threaten with an injunction if they have grounds to stand on.
Okay.
Kind of tying that into a little bit of our class.
Yes, very recently what we were doing. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, not really related to this. I'm gonna segue away a little bit, but
Okay.
for getting into this career, are there any like suggestions major wise you would say? I think you could say like journalism, but
Yeah. So taking anything in communications. So I have a master's in communications and journalism at San Jose State. I also have a bachelor's in English. So a bachelor's in English can get you, that could be a gateway to being a journalist. And that's kind of why I did a bachelor's in English, because you can go in a lot of different directions in the media with a bachelor's in English. And so that's so standard, right? So that would be a good route. I got an AA also in journalism at Los Madonnas College. That helps as well. But honestly, if you just start writing for free for a local newspaper, learn the ropes. And here's another suggestion. You could do that. So you could, you don't need a college education to do that. There's a lot of writers out there that didn't have a college education that just jumped in and they love to write. The best ways, like this is the Orinda News. This is what I'm editor in chief of, and it's a monthly newspaper. The best way is to read it. Read. Well, what's really cool about that is that you don't have to study it, but you can learn it through osmosis. And osmosis is basically like just internalizing it, just consuming it. And when you're reading an article, just reading it and reading more articles, read from the San Francisco Chronicle, read from the New York Times, read from the Boston Globe or wherever, wherever you want to read, whatever news source you like. Read it, because it'll start to get into you. You'll start to naturally be able to pick up how you're supposed to write.
Okay.
So does that make sense?
Yes, it definitely does. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's a good way too, is to just immerse yourself in the topics and the writing. Like, let's say you want to write about astronomy and you want to get into that whole world. Start picking up those types of things, those newspapers and magazines. Or if you want to be a book author. Now, a book author is a whole different cat as well.
Yeah.
So book author writing they love the Oxford comma, but that's a whole different ball game. So whatever you want to get into, whatever field, and this goes for any job. I mean, if you want to be a train engineer or mechanical engineer or whatever, is to immerse yourself in that field. You had networking, I think, on your questions. Networking is key. Like, I'm naturally a person that loves to ask questions. I am super nosy. And I think I got it from my grandmother, because my grandma, she would be like anywhere on the bus talking to a stranger and have their whole life story by the time she gets to her destination. And I'm that way. I am so nosy. And for me, it's almost like no question can be unturned. I will ask anything. I am not even afraid. What's the least or the worst that can happen? They say no.
Exactly.
Stay out of my business. Whatever. I'm like, okay, cool. Or a restraining order, but whatever. I've never had one on me.
Nice to hear.
Never on my record, but I'm close to stalkerish. It's like, don't be afraid to ask those questions. It's like, why go through life and not knowing the answers to the questions that you want, even like for family members. Okay, now we're getting into family life. But you could just, you just ask questions, so ask people in that field, ask writers, reporters, broadcast news journalists, train engineers, ask them, hey, can I shadow you for a while? Can I do this? I'd love to know more about your job. For the Stockton Record, I pitched this to my editor, one of my favorite editors. And I said, what I'd like to do is I'd like to do like a series called Walking a Mile in Her Shoes. And I said, what I'd love to do is piggyback with a person, a female in her job for like an hour or two and write about it. And so she was like, oh my God, I love that idea. And so I did like that for about a year. And so I was like following. So I skydived for the first time.
Exciting.
I wasn't planning on it because she was like, so my editor was like, wait, it's summer, maybe something in skydiving, and I'm like, oh, I know a place in Byron that does it, that teaches. And I found a female instructor, Amy. And so went to meet her. I asked her if I could, I said, I have no problem going up in the plane and everything and watching you jump out and take those pictures and everything. And just, and she does tandem skydiving. And so when I met her, she was like, well, you should do it. And my editor said, you don't have to. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm not doing this because I want to write the story. I don't want some other reporter to write about the reporter that was supposed to tandem skydive and she died. I didn't want to be that girl. And so my editor's like, you don't have to if you don't want to. It's okay. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do it. So I meet her and we talk, and she was a mom of 2 little girls. And I'm thinking, she doesn't have a death wish, so this is good. She just made me feel really comfortable. And my boyfriend was with me at the time, and he's this big 6'3" guy, kind of overweight and everything. And she says, you both can do it, for free. We won't charge you, and we'll do the video and everything for free. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it. Okay, I'll do it. I can't believe I'm saying yes to this. I can't believe it. And then he chickened out. I'm like, yeah, right. Okay, that's just great. You're chickening out on that. Thank you for the support and the backup. And we did it. And I have the video. I should send it to you. I should send it to everybody.
Yes.
Got the video and everything. I survived, obviously.
Yeah,
I won't do it again because I feel like I'm a survivor. But
my one and only.
My one and only. I did it. But when you were asking, that might have been my most craziest one that I've ever done for a story. But another one was following I've got an eyelash that's falling off. Another one was following a nurse in a couple that was having their baby. So I got to witness that. I'm like crying and everything. Yes. I had to wear scrubs, and it's so funny because I didn't know I had to wear scrubs because I was wearing a cute little outfit and everything. And they're like, okay, so there's your scrubs. There's the you got to pick your size. And I'm like, what? Wait, what? What about that? Yeah. And so, and I'm short, I'm 5'2". Mm-hmm. And so their scrubs are like long legs and everything for my, I think I was wearing a size 12 at the time. And I was like, so when you're short and fat, the scrubs look horrible. And I'm like, oh God, no. So I wear that, and I've got my reporter's notebook, and I'm taking notes, and I'm watching the family and everything. And they're Spanish speaking. It was really sweet. The whole thing was amazing. And then one of the nurses comes by me and says, where's Dr. So-and-so? We need to get Dr. So-and-so right now. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just the writer. And I couldn't even get all of that out. And they're like whizzing past me like, too late. And I felt bad, like I was going to get fired or something as a nurse. Because I wasn't even a nurse. And the lady came up to me later and said, I'm so sorry. You look like one of the nurses and stuff. I'm like, oh, so I look like a nurse. That's cool.
The scrubs help me blend in.
Yeah, so that one was crazy, but yeah. But back to networking, don't be afraid to talk to people and meet people, and just even message people on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. Just even if you're not connected, just message them and say, hey, I see that you're in this field. I would love to talk to you about that. I'm thinking about going into that field, and I'd love to ask you some questions about it. And if they're local, ask if you can shadow them for a day. Okay. Because you may end up thinking, I never want to be a nurse ever. No, or a chef or something, you never know until you experience what they're experiencing.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We've been talking about networking a lot, and
the importance of it,
Yes.
and LinkedIn has continually come up. So
Yeah, LinkedIn is great, but you know what else is great is using social media, all platforms. So have you heard of Nextdoor?
Yes, I had it for babysitting actually.
Perfect. So Nextdoor is great for networking. Even for me as a freelance writer, sometimes you run out of story ideas and you're like, what do I write about? What's different? What's important? What can I do? I will post on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Nextdoor. Where else? There's another YouTube. I mean, everywhere, and just say, hey, I'm looking for someone to write about. And then I'll give the parameters. I'll say, I'm looking for someone in Contra Costa County, someone who's never been in the newspaper before, someone who's doing something great for the community, some sort of .org company, like that. And I'll get lots of things out of the woodwork, but even more so, I'll just be looking at my feed and seeing stuff. And the story that I'm working on right now is a young girl in Oakley who won a chalk drawing contest. It's called Walk the Chalk. And her mom just signed her up for the activity just to it's an activity.
Yeah.
Didn't know it was a contest. And here this girl ends up winning first place. And so the mom was posting on Nextdoor saying, I'm so proud of my daughter. She did this and stuff. And I'm looking at that, and the drawing was amazing. It was an eyeball, and in the pupil was like palm trees. And it was really pretty, the whole eyeball and everything.
Yeah.
Really nice. And so I private messaged the mom and said, hey, asked her a few questions and said, I'd like to send a pitch to my editor to see about doing a story. And my editor said yes. So there's $150 right there, just from looking at a feed and thinking, there's a story right there.
That is so cool. I love that, just like the random little aspects of it, of like,
Yes.
Oh, this is just a random story. Here, I'll take it, go.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think that was most of my questions. Just like, are there any final most important things I should know about this job?
I don't know. When I interview anybody for a story, I always tell them, if I think of anything else, can I ask you later and stuff like that. Or what I always ask them on almost every person, celebrity or non-celebrity, I always ask them, is there anything you'd like to add? 95% of them say no, we're done. We're good. Because they're just like, I made it through the interview. Woo! So I'm trying to think. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything, but I mean, this is a subject I could talk about for like all day long.
Yeah.
I love writing. I think you just need to have a passion for writing and a passion for telling other people's stories. I personally feel like everybody has a story. Everyone who even says, I don't have a story, they have a story.
They do. Yeah.
They have a story deep inside that they might be embarrassed. They don't want to share it with the world or whatever. But I think that everyone has a story, and I want to know about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to share it with everybody else, because I think it's worth sharing. Because I think when people start reading these kind of stories, they look at it and go, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
I'm not the only person that has thought that or felt that way or experienced that.
Mm-hmm.
So I do love when, that story gets out, and I love telling that story. And I actually said, that movie, is it called The Sixth Sense?
Yeah.
It's like an AI movie, I think. It's an old one. I think from the 90s or something. I think it's called The Sixth Sense. Well, there's a line in there, this young boy, and he whispers and he says, I see dead people, but he goes, I see dead people.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Okay, so maybe I had the wrong title of the movie, but anyway, I'm like that. I don't see dead people, but I'm like that. But I say I see stories. So I could be talking to somebody and I'm like, they've already lost me, because not lost me, but I'm already thinking, oh, I want to pitch this to my editor,
Yes.
and I want to get their story. And sometimes most of the times they say yes. A very small portion will say no. But everybody has a story, and it's all around you. It's everywhere you go.
I love that so much. Okay. Well, that's gonna be it. Thank you so, so much for doing this with me. Okay, and can you send me the recording, or is it gonna be like?
Yes, I'm gonna upload it to YouTube, and
Oh,
then
awesome.
I'll send you the link to that, and I'll send it to everybody because everyone has to complete the assignment if they want to. It's extra credit, so if you don't want the extra credit, then you don't have to. But I think they would like it. I think that they'll enjoy it. But yeah, so I've got to render it because it's I think over an hour. I think is it?
Just about, yeah.
Okay,
about.
so it's going to take a little while. So once it's done rendering and I upload it to YouTube, and that might take a little while. It might be later tonight or tomorrow morning at the latest.
Okay,
How's that?
good. That's perfect.
Yay. Well, have a
Thank
great
you.
rest of your day and get your assignments in. No.
I'm working after this.
Good. Thank you. Thanks, Madeline, for doing this.
Bye.
Bye.